Hold up. Wait. We want to thank you for listening to the Pharms Not Farms podcast presented by Gorilla Healer by giving you a 20% off discount code to gorillahealer.org. Use code SEASON2 when you check out at gorillahealer.org off any item not currently on sale. And also be sure to check out buildthesoil.com, our Pharms Not Farms podcast sponsor, for all of your organic soil amendment needs. BuildTheSoil.com, the internet's #1 spot for your organic soil amendments. Back to the podcast. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Good to see you.
You too. I'm getting Barbara set up here on her computer, and wanted to say hello. So
thank you.
I will. The lighting is not that great here. I said that already. This is kind of, oh, that's better. Yeah.
That is better.
Yeah, much better.
How are you?
Oh, I'm all right. Just working my little tail away. We've got a big guest coming in tomorrow, and then big things happening around here, and going back east next week, and all that fun jazz. Yeah, how are you doing?
Well, thank you. Definitely keep busy.
Good. Okay, are you ready here?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna hand you over.
Oh.
Much love, brother. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
I got my props here.
Sweet. I love it.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. It's good to see you.
You too. So you met Linda Hand, huh?
I sure did. Yeah, I got to stay at her place with the whole band, and she's a gem.
She's a special lady.
Yeah, thanks to Summer and to Richard Rose for both telling me to link with her, and that was enough, and I did.
Oh yeah, she goes way back. Way back.
Definitely an OG like yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah, there was once an HIA that's got, it's probably, I don't even know when the founding of HIA, Hemp Industry Associations, started, but Richard Rose was one of the founders. I can't remember the other lady's name, and I was an advisor to them because I couldn't be president, nor do I want to be president of anything.
Fair enough. Well, it's good to know what you don't want.
Huh?
It's good to know what you don't want, so we can gravitate toward.
Let me get my sound up a little. Yeah, the industry has gone through a lot of changes and directions, and
well, let's get into it. Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Pharms Not Farms podcast. I'm here today again with a very special guest, an OG of the cannabis world and the hemp industry. And if you would be so kind, would you introduce yourself for anybody who doesn't yet know who you are, and I want them to?
Okay, I'm Barbara Filippone. I did the project management in the early days in the 90s in Romania. You disappeared, Brent.
Forgive me if my video goes off for a moment. All right, so feel free to start again.
Okay, my first experience with hemp was around 1989, getting rolls of hemp out of Thailand from the Hmong tribe, which was very narrow rolls of hemp. Well, maybe I should step back. I grew up in a mill town in New Jersey. My grandfather was a jacquard weaver with natural fiber, flax. So from the time I was a child, I've been sweeping floors at factories and learning from family. From there, I really didn't want to work in textiles. I was a good artist and designer for apparel. So my first years of my career were working in India with what I thought at that time was natural fibers. As time went on and seeing the conditions and the methods in India, it was quite obvious it was a very toxic environment. And due to my character, wherever I work, if the environment is not conducive to people being happy and working, I'm going to change it or I'm going to have to step away. Most of the time I can change it. Again, as years went on, I'm discovering we're in most of the fabrics that we thought were natural were not. They were chemically processed to convert them into synthetics. So at that point, what we thought was natural, when you test it, there was no plant matter detected. Are you rolling? What was that? I can see
There's
you.
no plant matter detected at all in these supposed natural fibers. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yes. Yes. Same as today. So when people see
what were these natural fibers being? What was being promoted?
Oh, there was rayon. There was viscose. There were georgettes.
Okay, and the
they're derived from wood, some cotton, mostly controlled grown wood pulps. They would get dissolved in chemical formulas and create slurries, it's called. And then they would produce what's called a filament yarn. It's sort of like a very thin fishing line. You know, it's a continuous length of fiber. There was no staple. And later on, I'll explain what staple length is and spinning systems and how it should be. So at that point, there was a fabric in particular that was very popular, but I knew that it was highly flammable. Like if anyone even walked near a campfire or was around anything, if you dropped a match or an ash on this specific fabric out of India, it would ignite.
Wow.
So back in those days, I decided to go on NBC News affiliate in Denver at the Denver March. And I didn't show my face, but we ignited a skirt. And at that point, it was banned from import into the US.
Wow.
Now, I'd love to say I'm an activist. I would love that. In my younger days, yes, I was driven by my passion, but now I come to realize you have to have the experience, the knowledge. And I like seeing you, Brent, because I feel like I can talk to you. So it's better to see you if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, because I feel like I'm talking to somebody, instead of myself.
You're talking to a whole lot of people right now.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm really really good in front of big crowds. Cameras, I freak out. But so we banned the Georgia. And at that point, before that, working in India, I felt it was my duty to try to improve not only the environments, but I was working with what's called the caste system. So the people that worked in these factories were mostly men, and the women were in management. And to make a long story short, it's completely unacceptable. And to this day, it is still unacceptable. And if we're going to scrutinize any country in fair trade or environmental stewardship, we should point ourselves towards India. And we'll get into the difference between India and China at some point. I don't understand how we are scrutinizing a 6,000-year-old culture in China, and we're not even 300 years old. And I could speak all day about that subject, but we're here to talk about the basics of hemp right now. The history of hemp was basically, we had George Washington, we had World War II. The hemp that was grown in those days was strictly used for twine and cordage, and the twines were made into canvas at a twine and cordage spinning facility, which is completely different than making a textile grade yarn. So the twine was woven into canvases that were used for backpacks, and then there was rope.
Like all the Navy ships still have hemp rope today.
Yes, and I believe there was manufacturing in the US, or it could have come from Canada. But my dad was in World War II, and he said it was our backpacks and our ropes. It was not uniforms. In those days, the uniforms were made from wool or blends of wool and cotton, but it was majority wool and flax. So, people think that hemp was made for uniforms. No, it wasn't. So that's the hemp that we OGs are trying to bring back. What happened here in the US, we're going to get into that discussion, but what I want to do is show the differences of what was historic versus what is currently happening. Historic hemp, my crops here, was stalk. Like, it didn't have branches. It had leaf with stems. A stem is very different than a branch, sort of like a maple leaf. You're not a branch, it's a leaf. So this is what we're striving for, something like this. Now, everyone's saying to me, I'm growing for fiber. I'm growing for fiber. Well, we've got to correct this because it's being convoluted, and I'll explain why as we go along. The fiber only comes from the exterior of the stalk. This is not fiber, the entire stalk. It's only this. That's where the fiber comes from. And through the years, well, I should go back. I've worked in Romania. I've worked in South Korea, all hemp project, Hungary, Poland, China for 27 years, Canada in the early days. With hemp, it kind of stole my passion because there was so much more value added than a cotton ball. There's so many subjects I want to cover, and sometimes I confuse people because we're going to talk about cottonized hemp too, because there is no such thing as cottonized hemp.
Mm.
I made up that word about 20 years ago. And then it ended up turning into the latest buzzword.
Mm.
But from this, we would say 15% bast fiber. It's called the bast. What's left after you remove this bast fiber is a very soft wood, high cellulose, and some lignin. It is not fiber. It is a softwood, and I thought I brought some samples to my desk, but everyone's seen what's going into hempcrete as a filler. It's hurd. It is not fiber. Now, in our current environment that's been manipulated, yeah, it could be fiber, this stick. If you dissolve it in a chemical formula, make a slurry, turn it into a filament or a monofilament, which is a synthetic material. So psychologically, we're saying, we're going to make t-shirts in America. We're all going to do it. How many pairs of socks can I make from a bush? I literally get these questions. Or, I'm going to grow for CBD, I'm going to grow for hempcrete, I'm going to grow for food, and I'm going to make t-shirts. There's nothing more absurd than taking that approach, because the infrastructure that's required to do each one of those things that people want to do, it's not really possible in one location. There's various supply chains. If you're going to be making food products, you've got to comply with health and safety and the requirements for handling food. If you're going to be working with fiber, you have to work with air quality control, vacuum systems. I have a tendency to elaborate too much and lose people, but it's so important that even if a fraction is picked up, it's going to help get us back on track. I pray.
Let me ask you a question, just for a little recap and outline of what we're talking about. You're saying that in terms of the hemp stalk that's grown, that you're holding, right? Mm-hmm. The fiber comes off of the outside of it, and that's the original hemp fiber. Now, you're saying in this day and age, companies are taking the inside of it and chemical and dip and soaking it.
Not yet. They're about to.
Ah, okay. So ultimately, in order to say that this is hemp made, they're in the process of mixing the hemp that's inside as well, not necessarily what you're calling the good fiber, and they're going to then turn it into a usable material. Is that what you're saying?
As I show you the props, you'll be able to connect the dots of what's going on.
Great.
Okay, on this specific hemp, let's just say in Canada in the early days, they planted the very first year what was called a dual purpose crop that produced seed. And this is long before Manitoba Harvest or Hemp Oil Canada. This was probably before a lot of the new generation knew about. I even have adults that don't know that Canada was the first to grow hemp.
What year around that? Around
Oh,
estimated?
God. It had to be mid 90s.
Okay.
Maybe a little earlier. I mean, for me, because it's a job for me, it's my profession. So working with ag waste, natural materials. So when people say to me, you know, what year, where were you? I got to look in my diaries. This is my job. It's not, you know, about me. It's about the plant and having the skills and the experience to work with it. So here we are. In Canada in the early days, we had a dual purpose, which produced seed, which looks just like a big kind bud. But when you squeeze it, all the seeds came out of the bud. And back in those days, Walmart gave a contract for that seed. And Richard can correct me if I'm wrong, Rose, you know, later on, but Walmart had the contract, but the seed was not cleaned and sized. And at one point, I guess the second year, the feds came in and said, oh, that seed is testing high in THC. But it wasn't cleaned and sized. So it could have been the residue from the bud. Now, today, we have cleaning and sizing. So
Yeah, Richard, we did an episode with Richard where he talks about cleaning the resin off to make sure that, you know, people are eating foods and they don't have to worry about testing positive for THC or, you know, the feds or anything like that.
right, because in the countries that I've worked in, hemp was used to ward off insects from vegetable gardens. So in Eastern Europe, like if someone had a vegetable garden, it would be bordered with little hemp shrubs. They would be pruned to where they were little chubby plants. And they weren't much higher than this, but it would produce an odor or aroma that seemed to ward off pests. Now, if it got
Those are the old school tarps.
yeah. And so, you know, I'm going to throw this in. Pesticides kill insects by attacking the neurological system. Now, this could be a good thing when it's controlled for human consumption, if it's a natural suppressant for killing an insect, but it could be helping with neurological disorders in the medical claims that are being made. So you have seed, you have the inherent property of that bud, whether it contains seed or whether it's grown as the CBD is, which is really just low THC. As far as the genetic modifications of industrial hemp, I'm against it. Why would you change something that nature gave us? Why do we you learn about the inherent properties and see what that plant had, and then go from there. I'm not an agronomist by any means, but I know what I've seen worldwide.
So rather than creating hybrids and breeding into different applications, you're more into land race genetics that are original and have their own divine properties.
Absolutely, because in the countries I've been in, nobody was genetically screwing around with the seed. You know, in I'm going to give a couple examples. In Mexico, okay, when in indigenous communities, and I can't say where, the kids were growing marijuana, and it was swag, you know, but the mothers would take the leaf and just boil it in water and make poultices out of it for arthritis. It was, there's an inherent properties. I don't want to, I have a lot of IP, but I spent a lifetime. And no, I'm not willing to just hand it to a carnival. I want to present it in a way where we can take this information and all of us move forward at the same time.
Amen.
Yeah, rather than this, it's turned into, I want to say this industry was built on love, respect, passion, principles, and then prosperity will come. But we were a tight family, all us OGs. And as far as I'm concerned, OG means old guy, because that's what we are. We have a plant that will produce seed. We have a plant, if it's grown like this, and if the flower, the leaf, is removed from the seed, there's two products. Then when we get to the stalk, there's various methods to growing, harvesting, retting, processing. It can be all mechanical. It can consider every environmental issue we're concerned about right now. We're concerned about water conservation. We're concerned about pesticides, herbicides. So why don't we approach this with what we're trying to solve, or progress, not perfection? Here we have this great plant. If you plant it at about 120 plants per square meter, your water consumption cuts to a third. You have no need for herbicides, because no weed is going to grow when you get your first fan leaves. So they're going to retain water in the soil. They're going to suppress weeds. You also, the fiber is really the least of my interests right now, even though I want it, but the economy of the scale and the return on investment just does not exist if we're to do it in an eco-friendly manner. The hurd inside is 85% usable filler material. So we have 4 products from historically grown industrial hemp. And the infrastructure that's required to do this right, but with a little tweak, because I had to consider, are we going to do it mechanically, or are we going to do it chemically? I don't want anything to do with the chemicals involved in these processes, because ultimately they're going to end up in our environments, our living environments, our wearing environments. It's okay. You can toke. I'm cool with it. I just can't.
I'll be honest, I had an itch and I thought it would be better to shut the camera off.
Well, I like talking to you. I feel like I'm talking to you and it makes it easier rather than looking at myself. And I talk to myself all the time, but it's better to have a face. Now let's look at what happened in America, because it's really very disturbing. This is what they're calling hemp. Okay. This is the stalk. There is an apple and an orange here. Okay, this is industrial hemp as historically grown. This is our modern day hemp. There is no bast fiber in this method. This is bark. This is wood. And anyone that is familiar with burning wood, there's hardwoods, which usually come from fruit trees. And then there's softwoods that are poplars and pine trees and, aspen trees. But this material is slightly more, it's not exactly a softwood, but I wouldn't consider it a hardwood. It's a wood. It's not a high cellulosic, spongy material that you're going to find in this. So out of this, here comes, and I find this fascinating, that marijuana would come first. Who would have thought that we would be allowed to grow our own weed and make an industry out of it? It's great. But what are we going to do with this? Because this is a lot of material that has value to it after you've harvested the bud. I've been in places throughout the US where this is in piles on farms, and I don't even have to see it, and I'll get out of a car and I can smell the mold. So it's becoming a biohazard. Now, the big difference our industry is going to do, because cannabis is cannabis. We've got, in my day, cannabis sativa was no THC. Cannabis indica was the stuff we smoked. Everything's changed now, but I'm just telling you what us old guys know. So this stuff, watch what's going to happen. It's just like recycling, okay? Somebody's going to come along and say, we're going to get rid of your biohazard. It's going to be like waste management. And they're going to say, pay us, we'll take it. But this round, we're going to say to them, no, you buy it from us. We're not paying you to take this, because the value of this is the next best renewable bio-based plant material in our clothing, which is bogus in a way, unless you disclose and provide full transparency of what the renewable bio-based plant material is. And I'm going to make it a little easier here. Corn. Okay, we have field corn, we have eating corn. everyone doesn't want to eat the corn. They don't even want to feed it to our dogs because it's all GMO. And I'm not going to get into the science of that because I can tell you exactly what was done with it. It was intended to reduce the need for pesticides. Well, the corn is being made into fabric now.
So basically, we're wearing glyphosate. We're wearing Roundup.
Yes. There was but in the processing to make the rayon from this, maybe the chemicals have affected the transmitting of the glyphosate. In Argentina, they did a study on GMO, and they discovered that the glyphosate transmits all the way down into the cotton t-shirt. So are we gonna eat? I'd rather eat the glyphosate than put it on my body. At least when you eat it, you're gonna get rid of it through your system somehow. It's not going to absorb through your epidermis. Yes, it's going to have effect, but when you're covering your body with a synthetic, your epidermis is the largest organ of your body. So why would we?
It'll break it down. If it goes transdermally, then we're not. There's no filter.
It requires more science, but I believe my hypothesis is absolutely correct because of what testing I've done. Because I'm not going to talk unless I have science to back it. It's these synthetic materials, and I absolutely need more testing, monies to identify specifically what I'm talking about. But when I've tested synthetic fabrics, the off-gassing, which is called VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Now, isn't it interesting that the word organic is used in VOC, which is synonymous with poison? VOC is poison, but yet the word organic also means, wow, I'm going to be eating organic foods. So I could dissect that too, because is it organic growing practices, or is the seed actually organic? And then is it certified grown organically? I mean, it's a little too vague to me. I'm a detail freak. I have to know everything. I want to know everything about it. But we were set up, this industry. This was orchestrated to be producing plants like this. It's the next best renewable bio-based plant material because it renews itself at about 100 days. If you're going to use wood, trees for making rayon, that's a number of years before you can utilize that wood to make rayon fabrics. I'm going to use generic terms because they've been branded, and I got to watch disparaging someone's brand, but they're targeting all the healthy, young, active people. Outdoor wear, you don't see it in babies' clothes. You don't see it in the elderly, but I'm losing my train of thought here.
You're saying you don't see it in babies' clothes. You're talking about the it is what specifically?
Rayon, viscose, you see poly cotton blends, but the future is what's in the textile industry. They're going to be calling it renewably sourced bio-based plant material, or renewable bio-based plant material, but they're not telling us what it's derived from.
Okay.
So right now, when you're buying corn, you're buying a brand, and all it says is renewably sourced bio-based plant material. They don't tell you it's from corn. Now, I've been hounding the acronyms in Washington about doing their job. Okay, this is misleading. Please disclose the content of that renewable bio-based plant material. Same thing with hemp. If we're to use the CBD shrub, it's an ideal resource for perpetuating the use of chemical processing methods, but they put a little cherry on the cake by saying closed loop processing methods. Everyone's heard the word closed loop. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's another way of saying we don't know what to do with the effluent water, so we're going to call it closed loop. We're going to reuse the processing fluids. How many times they can do that, I don't know. But eventually, that water's going to have to be disposed of. Eventually, they're going to have to look at the water consumption. There's a lot of pieces of that puzzle that are in question. And until I get a really clear answer, I'm going to continue to educate where this appears to be going.
So basically, you're saying, if I'm to understand correctly, the land race hemp strains, you don't need to use all these chemicals for, and the newer CBD stalks and stuff like that you're talking about, they require more synthetic processes because it's wood, it's not cellulose, spongy pulp.
Strictly for making fiber that would make yarn. This does not have fiber. You have to chemically dissolve it into a slurry, put it through what's called a spinneret that shoots out like, and I'm using layman's terms so that people can understand, a fishing line.
Mm-hmm.
If we use this according to my method, we don't need any chemical processing, because here's the fiber. I did it with Colorado hemp 4 years ago. Here's fiber.
So now you're presenting the solution.
I've had the solution, and I tried to educate over 8 years in the US. I've been to Washington with Governor Paulus. I've been in every Summer can tell you the magazines and articles and videos. I don't even know what they're called. I've been in Doug Fine's book. I've been in John Rulak's book, who was Nativa, I guess 25 plus years ago, before he was into hemp foods. He wrote about my work in China. I just often wonder why none of these guys mention this. I'm a team player. It isn't the male, female. It's, look, guys, people, we got to give credit where credit's due. You can't usurp the scars on my hands because they were never in the factories. But when I hear, I've worked for many companies as the project manager. This industry wasn't abracadabra, and all of a sudden there was hemp textiles. When I went to China, there was only two. I'm a textile engineer. There was two fabrics.
So you were going out of the country because you were already in, well, your father was in the textile industry. So what brought you overseas? What got you out of the US for hemp?
I got headhunted to China.
Okay.
Long before the WTO came into play, the World Trade. I went into Shandong, China.
What do you mean you got headhunted? For the people that don't understand.
Do you know the meaning of headhunting? Headhunting is where people seek out people with experience. And it's really weird because when they approach you, you think they're a housewife wanting to make pot holders. And after a day or two, they'll say, okay, I'm with this university or I'm with this government, and we're seeking out people with experience and knowledge. Headhunting is not going shooting elk and deer, because some people think that. But Donnie Wirtschafter was basically the person who connected me with one person in China. And that person then arranged. It should be a mini series because there's the human interest aspect, but there's the happiness and the tragedies that occurred because this was not easy for me. Mm-hmm. I was treated like I was the biggest cartel in the world when I was importing fabric. People actually thought hashish was going to come off the fabric. Mm-hmm. It was so ridiculous, the things that had happened over the years. But let's stick with the components. So here everyone's betting on a bud that's going to test below regulations and forgetting about what value is in this. Now, I don't want to see this made into clothing, but I don't think I'm going to change that. But there's a few other ideas. This will not decorticate, period. Everyone's asking for decorticators. How are you going to decorticate a bush with branches? Not going to happen. But what you can do with this is not a wood chipper, but a horizontal chipper. Because if you put it through a wood chipper, it's going to bind up with just branches because it's semi-hard, semi-soft wood. So a horizontal chipper, and you've got, I don't have an interest in this, so I'm not going to add to it. I think people that are working with particle board, MDF boards, in the building industry would have more knowledge what to do with this than I. My expertise is in something that gives us multiple products that will feed various existing infrastructures. We already have most of the infrastructure in the US to utilize this. So when people say we don't have infrastructure, well, it's right there. It's pretty much coming.
Is that the decorticators?
Yes, but before that, anybody that is growing for seed, this method, they'll say to me, okay, I have clean seed. Well, clean seed is nice, but if it isn't sized,
Mhm.
you're not going to have the two values. And I'm going to give a great analogy, two analogies in this. If you were to harvest a sunflower and Wesson Oil, let's say, has sunflower oil, they're not buying the same quality seed for the oil as you're eating out of a little bag when you're watching the football game.
Certainly,
So
just
it's
like the corn that's fed to cows and to cattle, cows and horses is not the same kind of corn that we're going to eat generally.
no, right. It's your sizing will
Yeah.
determine the value of that seed and where the application of that seed will be used. The first dehuller in Canada, I was involved in dehulling the hemp seed. God, we could go on for hours, Brent. I don't want to get off a track. Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Let's stay on track.
Let's stay on track. Okay, so, all right.
We're going great. This is an amazing class so far. I am so happy to be here and learning and sharing what I'm learning. So thank you. Really, keep going.
You're welcome. It was my destiny. I've been around natural plants since I could walk. Really, it's just I can't cook at all. Neither could my mother or my grandmother, but we know our fiber. We know what's natural. Hence, the United Natural Fiber Council is on the horizon. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I'm vegan. I'm going to say something. I don't eat animals. Strict. I'm extremely strict about it. But the vegans got to learn something. If you don't shear an animal, it will die. If you don't shave the wool from a lamb or the hair from alpaca or a llama, it's harmful to the health of the animal. So why would you not utilize animal hair? It makes
That
no
leads
sense.
that leads me to wonder, those animals, the ones that are, we're talking about, are they some sort of hybrid that they can't grow naturally? Or like how in the wild would they shed their and not have it be detrimental, just letting it grow?
Sheep don't live they live in the wild, but they come down. A little dingo dog and a horse will point towards a mountain, and literally it takes a dog and a horse. The sheep come down. The New Zealanders would come in and shave the sheep in the spring. I've watched it. It looks like it's torturous, but it's not. You got to get that hair off because there's lanolin clogging the pores, insects, whatever.
Okay.
So that's why the United Natural Fiber, the UNFC, is going to include plant fiber and animal fiber. And also, as long as people are eating beef and pork, why in God's name wouldn't you use the leather? Would you rather have it go to the landfill? I don't eat it, but I'm not going to let the leather go to a landfill. And as far as these synthetic leathers, I'd like to test the components in them to see if I'm absorbing any volatile compounds into the pores of my feet, especially for diabetics.
Yeah, I see a lot of faux fur out there and faux leather out there. And really, I've always wondered if that's more dangerous to the environment than utilizing the skin of an animal that was already taken, sacrificed.
Well,
And
you
so,
have to tan hides too, and a comparison would have to be done. I know enough to say we have to look into this deeper. And it brings me to a point where I'm going to say this. When you're sending something to a lab, like if the cannabis industry, I don't know what to call it, the acronym industry, the shrub, CBD, CBN, cannabinoid, I don't know. There's so many acronyms. If you're sending that plant to a laboratory for testing THC or heavy metals, laboratories do not necessarily test for volatile compounds. A lab's going to test whatever you ask. So when I did the very, very first antibacterial test, it was a specific lab. If I was going to do a viral test, it's a different laboratory. If I'm going to do whatever test I'm going to do isn't done in one lab. So as we're testing our bud for heavy metals, are we testing for other volatile compounds? I don't think so, unless they're sending it to a different lab that has been directed to look for volatile compounds. And I can understand why right now there's a lot of regulations coming in. If you open a restaurant, you can't serve food unless the health department gives you a stamp of okay.
mm-hmm.
A lot of people scrutinize GW Pharmaceuticals. I knew those guys when they started. They were a bunch of hippies. They took 28 years of clinical trials and had to get FDA approval for 2 forms of epilepsy. We've got to, I don't like the white man's paperwork. I don't like any of it. But you got to kind of play the game and abide by some of these regulations. Otherwise, there's an awful lot of liability. And I can tell you topically, I sat with my father for 2 weeks recently until he passed. And the only thing that gave him pain relief was CBD or whatever it is. I have a video of my 94-year-old father holding a jar of salve and said, I don't need anything for pain but this. So we have to do the work to make these claims. Otherwise we're just climbing up a hill and falling down. We can do this. But my job is to say, look, guys, I know the marijuana people don't want pollination. Okay, I don't understand all of this conflict going on. But where I go, I've seen pollinated crops. It's great. You get the seed, and you get the bast, and you get the hurd, and you get the root, and you get the leaf. Now, wouldn't you think you want more value-added products than just Russian roulette with a bud? I'd say everyone should grow marijuana because that's going to be the future. Maybe we can get people to stop drinking so much. I've never heard of anyone having a car accident smoking weed, and I've smoked plenty in my life, but currently not, and that's not a topic until I can figure out what's making me sick, because it's not the weed. But here is fiber, completely mechanical, no need for chemical processing. This was done 4 years ago. And here's a yarn that I made right here in Colorado. This is not rocket science. This is not huge investment. And at some point, I'll prove what I'm saying. Now, what's critical that everybody understands, this is a Kona yarn. This is a Kona yarn. There's about 30 different yarn sizes. Each yarn size requires mechanical, well, first you have to go through degumming. There's eco-friendly degumming, or there's a mechanical process, which I would prefer. Then it goes through mechanical processes to create, oh, it's so hard to explain sometimes because there's so much more to it. Here is a photograph. See that?
Uh-huh.
It requires 3 lines this length to create 1 size yarn.
Wow.
1. And that's a blend of hemp and organic cotton. Now, if there's only 15% bast fiber in hemp, the infrastructure required to make 30 different yarn sizes, there's also 4 different spinning systems. 4. For 15% fiber, it makes absolutely no sense on an economy of scale. So as people are saying, I want textiles, you better be careful what you're saying, because you can end up with this, which is chemically processed into a filament fiber.
So here's where I'm needing a little light. You're saying that the land raised hemp that you, not what you're holding, the other stuff, only has 15% fiber and is tough to scale up. And you're saying you want people to understand that, because at the same time, the other side of that is to use something that seemingly is available, though at the same time is going to be detrimental to us, considering the chemical processes that are already being used in clothes. And people, there are talks of the links between autism or neurological disorders and eating pesticides or wearing pesticides, as you're saying, which is even worse, in your opinion, which I see your point in that. And, we have stomach acid, and then we putting things on our skin, there's nothing to break that down. It just goes in us, and it gets in our bloodstream. So, I see your point there. What's the solution? If one side is tough to scale up and the other side is full of chemicals, what are we looking at?
Well, it's more than just chemicals. It's how it's grown. This is a shrub.
Okay, so let's talk about shrubs and that world.
So you're planting them apart in the field. Everyone has seen how they're planted.
Mhm.
Most of the people are using plastic as a weed suppressant.
To grow in rows and using plastic in the rows to make and holes. Okay, please continue.
That is by far the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. I want to say there is something called mulch. You don't have to use plastic, first of all. I've done this with other projects in other countries where we had weed problems. We brought in goats. Well, that didn't work. So what we ended up doing is just putting a very low density straw on the ground to suppress the weeds. So all this plastic, we're not only contaminating the soil, but we're contaminating the plant. Because think about when you were told, don't leave your water bottle in the car and then drink out of it, because it had leached, let's just call it crap, into the water. Yeah. So what makes us think that this plant isn't uptaking leaching from the plastic in the fields? This is wrong. I mean, I'm all for this, but do it according to a conscious level of what you're doing to the environment. Because there are ways to do this more eco-friendly. And another biggie I hear from people is, I'm using neem oil. That's natural. I'm using fish emulsion. Well, to me, I'm going, oh my God, did you read the MSDS report on neem oil? To see what it really is, a manufacturer's safety data sheet that is complete, not just up to question 16. I want to see up to question 28 on the report. Fish emulsion. Everyone says, oh, I'm using fish. Well, how the hell do you know what it ate and where it lived? You know, we've, and I want people to learn from this. I don't want them to get pissed off at me because I'm pointing out these things. I'm protecting them because eventually there's a lot of liability here.
So for the people who are finding viability in thinking they're saving money and using plastic or going in these routes, that might be the industry standard, how do we inspire somebody to consider these more mindful routes?
Starting with the farm. And I have a whole contract that when farmers were calling me saying, oh my God, this guy never showed up and my field is full of plastic. And I've had farmers, guys that you would never think would cry, but they've had a couple ditch eyes, a little bourbon and water before they call me, and they're really upset. I say, treat this as a lease. Somebody comes and asks a farmer to grow. In that lease, it has to specify no plastic.
So right now you're talking about people who are leasing land to farmers. That's definitely a good consideration.
Farmers leasing to people that want them to grow.
Okay.
Because the farmer needs protection. They have none.
Okay.
Zero.
For sure.
There's a way both people can benefit. But, I could spell this out on circles and dots on a 30-foot whiteboard. but we've got a lot of things to cover because we're already at almost ending. So, Brent, I want this info heard, but
Get it?
nobody lets me at no, the boys won't let me play with them.
Okay.
And the countries that I work in, I work with all men.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on projects, not just with hemp, Mexico. I have a CSR program down there for other plant fibers. We have an abundant amount of plant fibers that will work for apparel, but it's definitely this quantity of fiber is utterly absurd. And when
Okay.
they say cottonized fiber, it looks like cotton, it feels like cotton, but 85% of it is lint. You can't spin it on any system. And I've had many known names in the industry put this. God, I wish we had more time. I've got boxes of stuff like this. It looks like cotton. It feels like cotton. Oh my God, we're going to have t-shirts. You're lucky if 2% of this is going to make a yarn. If you're not a textile engineer and trained in qualifying fiber, it's not possible. And it's very important. I give another analogy. A cotton grower, when they harvest cotton, it gets sent to a gin. The gin is cleaning out the impurities. And then there's another machine that grades the fiber. So you end up with 3 to 4 grades of cotton. At that point, the commodity brokers will purchase what quality they want. So the same thing has to happen with hemp seed and this cottonized fiber. As far as I'm concerned, it sure as heck doesn't look like this. This is 100% hemp fiber that you only end up with 2 to 3%. This is Chinese fiber, long fiber, and we don't even have spinning systems in the US for that. That's why they cottonized, and it sure looks to me, I don't want to say anything inaccurate, but it's definitely not the method I would use. I'd like to see this method because it's already proven to make yarn and the infrastructure is already here.
And the plants used to make that, how much of it is that, the 15% that you were talking about?
Yes. And 98% of this very thin fiber I showed you, 98% of this is usable.
Okay.
I don't get the waste, but still the economy of scale, this is the last thing on the totem pole.
Okay.
Seed first. We know there's an industry for seed. We've got Wesson oil. We've got, well, I can't think of names of oil because I don't eat much oil. I do take my hemp seed oil, been taking it for years. We already have processors for that. And if hemp seed sells for $1.40 to $1.60 a pound, that's bingo. Then if you do get the proper decortication, because everything that I've seen is not done properly. Some people are getting there. There's 2 people in particular I'm watching what they're doing in their decortication method, but historically, there was never decortication. Back in the day, it was all hand done. In China, it was all hand done up until probably only 7 years ago. Literally manpower. So I've been working on building a decorticator, but it didn't make much sense when all I see is this.
Yeah.
So I decided what is the most important thing to launch this industry? Seed, because they harvest it. And believe it or not, the Chinese gifted me an industrial-sized machine to help us get back on track. They say in China, the word is, I made 63,000 jobs over the years. I would like to do that at home. But, I'm keynote speaker on this, on that. Well, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in sitting in a room with people that can carry out what I'm trying to share, because I've been doing this 30 years just with hemp and a lifetime with plant fibers. I don't want to do it anymore. I've got enough fabrics from China. We're never going to compete with China. Okay, let's be friends. And that's a whole nother episode. I would like to educate people on China. Okay, they're all Buddhist. That's all I'm going to say for now. There's no organized religion because that creates war and animosity and separates people. So let's just leave it at that. Buddhism is living in the now in harmony with each other. Boy, Brent, I'd love to carry this out into an encyclopedia since no one reads them anymore. I want to help. And when someone asks me a question, a younger person, let me answer. Don't answer your own question because it irritates me. I'm 65. I'm a proud 65. I get to talk about what I learned and experienced. I don't know everything, but I sure as heck need to get more involved and help us be on a sustainable path rather than some fad right now and feeding the big boys their next resource. Do you follow me on this? They set us up. The marijuana, the CBD, it was all approved for taxes and 100-day renewable resource. That's what happened when nobody was looking. And I could explain more, but I don't want to be...
So rather than do it the right way, they're creating that people are creating more, putting these industries into with fuel by these chemical processes, and saying that now we have. Pardon?
They don't know it. After they harvest the bud, they don't realize this material is the next best resource for making, and I knew this was going to happen, so I made fabrics that can utilize this, but in a more eco-friendly manner.
So you have the solution in that way. That's what we're talking about now, is utilizing that stuff in a way that doesn't contain all the chemicals that we're talking about are bad. Is that what you're saying?
No, it does contain some,
Okay.
but it isn't anything that is not in our, it takes, I don't like answering a question halfway. I
Okay.
have to explain the answer because otherwise it's assumed. But it's hard for people to retain all this. But ask me a question, or if anyone does, I just want this industry to get on a sustainable long-term path. We already have so much of the infrastructure. So when people say, oh, we don't have the infrastructure, or, oh, we're going to build a plant where we're going to make particle board, we're going to make granola bars, we're going to make this and that. Please don't believe it.
Okay. So what's the solution?
The solution is I'm boss. And I can at least direct people with great passion and ideas to find this, what is their passion? Is it growing? Is it processing? Are they interested in building materials? Are they interested in food? Because choose something and become the best. If you're trying to do 10 different things with people that don't have experience, what is the outcome going to be?
Diluted.
So my job as a project manager, there's two things: logistics and outcome. Is it feasible? Those are the two most important things when I go to any project with ag waste. What are our logistics, our ability to move, and can we reach the outcome? What infrastructure is currently there? Are we going to invest $300 million in it takes 5 factories to utilize natural fiber and make it into a garment. Are we going to actually do that in a natural method if we only get 15% bass fiber? Or are we going to feed an infrastructure that's a chemical closed loop process? As far as I'm concerned, I don't want to see it. We want progress, not repeating. The recycling plastic. Why the hell are we recycling it? Why don't we make it into chairs?
What does the progress look like to you?
Bleak right now. Bleak. And I'm going to start a few things so that I can, or it would be nice if some of the events I spoke at would put those videos up and let people see it, because what I've just told you, I'm like a broken record. I've said this so many times. Here's this percent, here's that percent. Give people access to the things I've been tape recorded. I don't see them. I wonder where they are.
From what I'm hearing you say, like, it sounds like you're saying you don't think we're at a point where we can scale up making hemp clothes in an effective, in a healthy way.
No.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I keep asking what the solution is. Do you have a solution for this, since we want hemp clothes? Okay.
I don't think it's going to be clothing, the application of hemp in America, because of the economy of scale and the return on the investment. It would take a lot of years to do it in a natural way. But this 15% fiber in a non-woven format, where you're not making yarn, you're going to do just what we did with BMW and Mercedes-Benz in Europe, Don Agro and hemp flax. car panels. They're successful.
Okay, so now we're saying this is the delineations, right? That I'm I'm seeing the distinctions that you're talking about. Whereas you're saying, hey, if you're looking to grow hemp to make clothes here in America, you might be barking up a tree that you might not be able to process. At the same time, if you're looking to benefit or be successful growing hemp, you might want to look at things that have the life of ROI that you're looking for, and that you have seen in this country, at least currently, is hemp seed. That's what you're saying.
Yes. Yes, Canada approved it. 25 years. Where do we think all the hemp seed oil food products in Whole Foods or natural grocers or wherever? That's an industry.
And then all the waste products that have the potential of being turned into these chemical slurries, so to speak. You're saying that, or I don't know what you're saying, but
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
You'd rather turn that into mulch.
Or or MDF board if it's going to come from this. If we're going to continue grow like that, that's just one idea. I could give 100 ideas, but I don't work for free.
Boom. So if people want to get in touch with you, or if people want to have a consultation, or is that something that you offer up?
Yes, we have a couple levels I work at. First, I have to qualify them. I need to know their name, their company name, whatever background. And then we book an initial consultation, and then I determine what's needed. I may send them to someone else, but I want them to have choices. And right now, they don't have the full picture to make a choice.
You're saying people are getting into business without realizing the playing field?
Not at all. And we've got to protect the farmers. Without the farmers, there is no industry. And the people that are, okay, we've got 2 minutes.
Listen, here's what we're going to do, okay? Let's take a water break and a restroom break. We'll come right back. I have another 45 minutes, half hour to 45 minutes I can dedicate with you so that we can fulfill the message. If that's okay with you, I'd be delighted to. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you. There you go.
Okay. This is current day industrial hemp.
On
this one.
Yeah.
This is not what I've seen anywhere in the world over 30 years. I don't know, other than what I described as this being 100-day renewable bio-based plant material. It's renewable at 100 days versus trees. So I really don't want to see synthetic textiles of any sort. I strongly believe, but again, until I can do more detailed testing, I would say a lot of our health issues today are due to the synthetics that we're wearing. And I can pinpoint it exactly, but the costs to do that are not in my budget when I'm stocking over 80 fabrics in order to make it possible for people to utilize the raw material. Even if it's from China, when it hits our seaports, we are creating jobs from the moment it hits here. Drivers, cut and sews, packaging companies, work at home moms, businesses. I've worked with automotive companies. I don't like disclosing names because of NDAs. I do honor NDAs, but there's very big industries that want to change. They want something that's going to eliminate a component that they know is toxic. And we have components right here. We're not going to be the next Louis Pasteur. I love the name of your show. I love it because it says it all. What are we going to do without farmers? Because that's what's happening. West of here, beautiful orchards that produce pears and apples and peaches and apricots. They were torn out to grow shrubs that were left abandoned, lined with plastic. And here's these 3 generations of farmers going, I lost everything. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. If someone wants to lease land from a farmer and have the farmer grow, there has to be contracts where the leasee is the responsible party. I do it in my business in the sense if someone places an order for 5,000 yards of fabric, they have to put skin in the game. I want a deposit. I'm not a bank. I'm a manufacturer. I'm a designer. I am not a bank.
Yeah.
Same thing should go for anyone, especially going into the Native American land. They are responsible. The leasee, the leaseor will have an agreement where both sides are considered. But the burden is not going to lay on the farmer anymore. It's not going to happen. Every farmer that calls me, I say, well, right now, let's get a contract in place for the party that's approaching you to grow.
So generally, the farmer is the people who own the farm, and the party contacting them are the ones who want to come in and start growing hemp. And then that you're saying that the contract, that there should be a contract, and that contract should be transparent as to having a meeting of the minds based on what's going to be, how the land will be used, what the permitted uses of the land are, and how the land, or how the whatever's brought onto the land will be disposed of, as well as potential considerations for, or contingencies, if of course that doesn't happen in the way that is meeting those
absolutely. And skin in the game for the operational costs that the farmer is, the labor costs, the machinery costs. If you're gonna, it's just like if I rent an apartment to someone, I have a security deposit.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that makes any sense, because everybody that I talk to have bales and bales of hemp. And one of the big things that has to be considered is the mold.
Yeah.
Aspergillus niger is one of the molds I'm seeing on baled hemp. I can smell it. I can see it. I see it on the shrub grown method. And that's a deadly mold.
Yeah, I've seen that in terms of people who were wanting to show me hemp that I would, extract. And I've turned down most of it, and it's a sad state of affairs when people have gotten so deep into growing, and then they ruin it in the in the process, and without really understanding what it takes. If you have X amount of acres, you're going to need X amount of square feet to dry your crop, and if you don't have the ability to do that in an efficient way, you're going to ruin what you grew, because it's going to mold, and then you're going to look for ways for people to extract that and turn that into distillate. So now we have how much percentage of the industry is coming out with CBD oil that was really from moldy material, and so people aren't talking about that kind of thing either. Ever the more I want you to continue. This is a show about your focus.
Well, if they're sending, say, the CBD extract, and I really hate acronyms, if they're sending it for testing for THC levels, nobody is looking to see if there's mold. A lab that tests for THC is very unlikely to be testing for molds.
And they don't test for, glyphosate in the way that that's only a water-based test. So you can't actually send, maybe there are labs now, but I remember a couple of years ago, I was looking to find a lab that tested the soil, and they said it was only water that you can test. So for the most part, so many farms have converted their Roundup laced cornfields into hemp, and these days you only have to, for people that don't know, not grow with those unapproved pesticides for 3 years, and then that land can now be deemed organic, which is, it could have been having drowned in pesticides for the past 50 years. Right. And still, and
there's labs, Brent, that will specifically test for any, they could, if you say, I'm looking for like glyphosate, or I'm looking for a heavy metal, or I'm looking.
Oh, sure. We do heavy metal testing, though, in terms of specifically for that chemical that's in Roundup. I only found labs that tested water sample. They only did water samples. They didn't do soil samples. So it was,
I would first check to see if they're endowment money, because endowment money dictates the outcome. The endowment money for colleges dictates the curriculum. So a lot of the colleges, I don't like working with colleges because I'm told what the curriculum is, and it's not my scene. So if the students are going to school, they're paying for an education, but behind the scene, there's endowment that says, okay, we want to talk about regenerating cellulose into apparel grade textiles. Well, why aren't they teaching about utilizing natural resources? And it's not just hemp. I mean, I worked with nettles 35 years ago.
I was going to ask you about that, because recently I read about nettles being used as clothing. They said it was like the stinging suit. And
no, it's not commercialized yet. I mean, even when I did it, maybe it was 40 years ago. I have some yarn here, but each fiber, I can't disclose what this is, okay? But remember, our fiber, here it is on hemp. Here is another resource that comes out of one leaf of a plant that yields fiber for 7 years. This can be mechanically processed and be utilized in blends at 100% hemp. It can make yarn, it can make twine. I've mechanically processed this fiber and blended it with wool.
So you're saying that you know of a plant that you can take the leaves and you can even blend them with hemp and other fibers to make what you just held up.
Yes. Oh, I have an office full of resources that yield much more fiber. What we have to, that's why I formed the UNFC, United.
More fiber than hemp produces.
Oh,
Is that
absolutely. Absolutely. But hemp contains the industry. And again, this is IP. So, but nobody is really understanding the value of the core of this plant. They're putting it into concrete mixes. The value of this, based on the specification of the end user. There are industries right now that could utilize the hurd to replace components in their existing products
that are probably toxic?
Yes. Yes.
Insulation in houses?
This can work as insulation, but you need a fire retardant because this is highly flammable. Now,
hempcrete is not highly flammable, though, right?
Hempcrete, the only reason it's not flammable is because of the lime.
Yeah.
Hemp is it burns hot.
Yeah.
Very little smoke. When I was working on the Decorticator, it was kind of cold in the winter. I said, let's burn some of this stuff. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, this isn't producing much smoke. It's more of a vapor, and it was very hot and it burned very slow. There's endless applications. I specialize in product
and it was
development.
fully dried?
Yeah. Yeah. See, when you've done this your entire life, you start to see inherent properties, and especially ag waste. I'll give you a good example. When coconut water got really popular, there was so much waste. I got headhunted to a project. And I looked at this waste and I said, wow, I think we can use this to make an alternative to polyurethane foam. And sure enough, here it is. And it's only 2 components. It's coconut waste with natural tree sap, which is like a rubber, latex. 2 components. There's also kudzu in the South, where they call it a noxious weed, when that fiber mechanically can be as beautiful as silk. There's the 3M sponge. A lot of people knew about the brown sponge, the greener, cleaner brown sponge. It was in the stores. It wasn't that yellow and green. It was a brown sponge. That was another project I worked on where it was waste from a beverage processing, which I can't disclose, but it was progress, not perfection. What I did was use 50% of that waste with 50% polypropylene and made a non-woven, heat set it, and it became the new surface to the 3M sponge. So there's so much, but if we're not taught it in the schools and we're taught what the lobbyists and the endowments want, we're just spinning our wheels and recreating what's got us here in the first place. When I was a kid, my mom took me to the Passaic River in Paterson, New Jersey, and said, remember how beautiful this river was? Well, now look at it since synthetics have come. You know, I'm so grateful for my mom, and I'm so grateful that my daughter, Summer Star, it's in her blood. It's just, it's not something you can learn in school right now. I'm hoping many years ago, Eileen Fisher, the famous designer, and I created a conference at Fashion Institute in New York to start talking about a curriculum that the school could start teaching what sustainability was. And I wrote a definition for sustainability. I did the first product transparency 20 years ago. All of it's starting to take hold now, but it's not at the level I intended it to be. Transparency. Certifiers, anybody could pay someone for a sticker. I feel the product developers need to be held accountable, just like a judge or a doctor. You take an oath, and if you break that oath, then it's punishable by law. Because a sticker isn't, what does it tell us? You've got, okay, the USDA, it's certified organic. Okay, I accept that one. I have issues with the others because I've checked it out. If somebody says something's VOC free, off-gassing, well, why are they testing it at below body temperature?
Talk about it.
Yeah. Let's see what it does when the temperature is elevated. And the California fires was a great example. Colorado fires. When chemicals burn and synthetics burn, the smoke is black. When it pre-burns, the smoke is white.
Talk about it.
Yeah. When the house is burned down, what was still standing? The concrete walls and the springs from the furniture. And if you look closely, you don't even see charred woods because you had a synthetic material over that sofa you sit on. You had polypropylene, you had foams, you had all kinds of synthetic materials. That's fuel. There was nothing left. Start looking at where the fires were because the trees were still standing.
It's true. Even here in Boulder, you know, I saw fires. It was a really weird fire, you know, the way it was burning on the ground and burning through trees and just creating, you know, black trees, but still, like, a lot of the trees are still alive now. You just see,
Right.
you know, evidence of the fire was there.
Right, and the smoke wasn't black.
No, it was white.
Right. The black smoke is the synthetics burning. And the corn, I've got to throw this in, because the corn in the 70s was intended for fuel for our cars. Well, that didn't happen because it burned too fast. Now, what do you see at the pumps? 20% ethanol in with your fuel. And what that does is just makes it burn faster.
Mm.
You know, this
Charging more, they're cutting it with corn ethanol, and it's burning faster. You need more. It's the dealer, man. The man.
But the man doesn't know. First of all, I would say half of them don't know any better.
It's the education. Thank you.
Yeah, but they're motivated by profits.
Certainly. How do we turn it over and get more?
Well, let's just ask these guys. Let's just say there's a heaven. Let's just pretend. What are they going to do? Take suitcases of cash there? I mean, when is it enough? And I believe every company, I don't care how big or small you are, you have to have a corporate social responsibility program. If me, as one woman on a project, could adopt a community, teach them how to make a natural fiber product, and keep their community going for 15 years and get them a teacher, build them a small clinic from the profits, and I'm only one person, why can't, and I don't want to say their names because they infuriate me, why can't they give back rather than giving Coca-Cola? How about they give the kids water? How about they teach the children how to make agua fruta? Fruit water. There's plenty of fruit. Get a blender. I bought 6 blenders and went into a very poor community, and I ran them off of generators, and the kids went from drinking Coca-Cola to drinking tamarind and water. Okay, you know, that's a fruit. There's so many easy, low-cost solutions that I'm bewildered at the lack of vision that's happening and the lack of caring for your fellow man. And I have to say this, but is anybody, if they needed a heart transplant or if they needed a liver transplant, would they say, I only want a white guy's? Come on. Would you deny a heart or a liver from a black or an Asian? What, are Italians going to be next on the list? And by the way, it's called Italian, not Italian. There's more than one of us. Singular. If one more person says, what kind of name is that? Are you Italian? And I say, well, there's more than one. But
We Italian.
yeah, you know, education is our wisest investment. And I've seen that propaganda all over the world. We just haven't seen it. There's 3 signs, posters I've seen worldwide. The first poster is an ear of corn wearing a green sweater that says, corn will compete with cotton for investment. What? The second one says, Waste will be our future energy, and it's a windmill with a banana as the mill thing. And the third is a dollar bill that says education is your wisest investment. Now, I like the last two. The first one, a veneer of corn and a sweater, is ridiculous. Whoever came up with that, I'm going to refrain from being sarcastic and funny. Next show, I'll turn on my comedy hour of it. But this has been the hardest journey of my life with hemp. You'd think I was public enemy number one. It's incredible the things that have happened to me. That should be a book in itself. And I sit here and I look and say, God, they can grow marijuana now. They can grow hemp. God, if I brought in a container of shirts from Eastern Europe, it was held and inspected because they thought hashish. When I did project management for Ecolution, on the tag, that was Steve D'Angelo and Eric Steenstra's company. Now, they don't talk about that much, but it was a fabric and garment company. On the label, it had 2 little hemp leaves. I was held at JFK because I had garment samples with leaf on it. And I was told that to step back and say nothing because they had to open every one because they were collecting the residue of hashish. We've come a long way, baby, but we haven't come far enough. We got to talk about this more than this, because you can get medicine from this. And that's a whole nother aspect of the plant. There's so much I'd love to say, but it's time. It's time. I've invested my life into this. I don't have any relationships other than work relationships because it's not fair to anyone to try to have a relationship because I'm obsessed with making a change. Even if it's a little teeny weeny one, at least it's progress. It may not be perfection, but
What's the change you want to see happen right now?
Right now,
obviously we need baby steps, but yeah, what right now?
First of all, start growing hemp the way it was intended.
Where do people get seeds to do that?
That's a really good question. In Europe, we had seed banks. I was not involved in that part of it. I remember in Canada, they used a seed called Carmignola. It was called a dual purpose. Then there was Finola. I strictly come into projects, and for me in America, my greatest suggestion is don't plant 500 acres of hemp this year. Start testing and planting according to what was historically done. Then you hire me.
So you mean that somebody who's starting out, that's who you're talking to?
Well, somebody that's starting out, first of all, when you call me and you say, I want to grow hemp, the very first question I ask them is, are you growing shrubs or are you growing hemp? And they don't know what I'm talking about. And
so what's the difference?
Huge difference.
Tell people right now, what's the difference?
One's a shrub and one's industrial hemp.
So one grows 12 to 14 feet high, one grows 3 to 5 feet
Not
high.
14 feet. When you see 14 foot, that's usually canaf. Okay, it's not hemp. Just plant it
So 8 to
densely.
10, whatever. One's tall and thin. The other one's
Yeah.
bushy and short. More or
Yeah,
less.
and
One's
one
grown
beak.
for flower, the other one's grown for the pulp or the hurd or the fiber
Or the seed.
or the
You
seed.
allow it to
Okay.
pollinate and go to seed.
Full bloom.
And a lot of agronomists will argue with me because they're very influenced by their educations. But it's where I've been. I said, what do you guys do? How do you, like in China one time, I said, how do you plant this stuff? What do you got to do? And there was this guy, I swear to God, he looked like Buddha. He was sitting there and he says, puts his hand in the seed in his hand. He throws it, broadcasts it. He pulls his sun hat over his eyes and he does this because I hadn't, I had a translator that said, she wants to know how it's grown. And then the translator leaves and I'm with this guy in the middle of nowhere. He does this. And I said, oh,
I throw it on the ground, then I wait, then I pray.
Yeah, I mean, I never saw rows of hemp. I never saw anyone planting it or cloning it. I mean, the only thing I know that was cloned was a sheep with a goat, I think. This modern day manipulating nature, how is this any different than the GMO crops we're talking about? I want to know what they're doing to hemp to say, well, I've got this variety or that variety or this species is that species. And first of all, they name it things like my dad said, he just passed away. But he said to me, he said, you're telling me the names of these things. Why would I want to eat something like that? Because I tried them on CBD. I tried everything. And it does work. Topically, I saw it work. It saved him. It really, his pain, I dosed him with some liquid. And I don't know whether it knocked him out, made him sleep. I don't know because I've tried everything, CBD, everything, every brand, and I don't feel
any. Mine, my dear.
Huh? I'll try it. I'm up, but I can't have anything with THC if it's grown indoors because I'm being poisoned. I've smoked high THC since I was 11 years old. It is not.
I will take care of you after the show. We'll talk about it. I'll get your address. I'll make sure you get some Gorilla Healer oil. And I would love the opportunity to impress you, especially considering how critical you are. I want in. And so we'll talk about that. And listen, we have a few minutes left. So I want to talk about the things that you love and the things that you want to bring to this world and what you want the people to know about so that we can have more solutions. Because, that's what I see in you is your many solutions. That's what we were talking about is the divine wisdom in the feminine teaches the divine wisdom in the masculine, and we work together and teaches the divine feminine as well. And that's where we're learning from this, from your wisdom as I always say you're the only person in our world who loves what you love the way you love it. And so when you share that, we learn, and in that way, that's your magic. We get to experience your magic. And so to share your magic in a way, in a frequency that's going to resonate, that to me is the most important thing, because your message is so important. So what is your message? What's the solution that you're looking to bring to the world?
First of all, there's others. I'm being a voice for the people that taught me. It's a handed down thing. it's a destiny for me. Like the Chinese say, why do you always just get frustrated? This is your destiny. Embrace. So the destiny is we have to restart this industry and we have to all get along. The marijuana growers, the medicinal growers, and then the industrial growers.
What does that look like?
Hmm?
What does that look like?
Well, from what I can see, first of all, we're growing marijuana in greenhouses. How is that conserving energy, first of all? Yeah, I'd just like to know. I mean, I'd like to know what their electric bill is. I'd like to know what their water consumption is.
Okay, so that's a good point. You know, pardon?
And why are they using so much damn plastic? I'll make them pots, no problem. Reusable pots. I don't want to eat or smoke or drink anything from plastic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to.
Okay, so you want to see less plastics being utilized in growing and farming industry.
Yeah, in the cannabis industry.
In the cannabis industry and anything that people are consuming. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And what are more solutions?
More solutions, reducing what they're doing in the fields, again, with the plastic.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with the plastic today.
Right, rightfully so. There's micro plastics in the ocean. They're ruining a lot of things. They're ruining us. I'm very I go get water at a place in the mountains, and he only uses glass, and he says, "You want to make plastic tea? I'm not going to give it to you." You know.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
If it's good water, it's gonna steep well. So and
yeah. Well, it's the passion over the last 8 years. I came back. Summer said to me, "Mom, you got to work in America. You got to work in America." I said, "I've never worked in America. I mean, this is like a fish out of water for me. It was very difficult to adapt."
Well, we have to figure out. Listen, I imagine we're going to say something very similar right now, and if I may, just bring this out, and I want you to have the floor after until we're done. Caring is the way. How do we care more? And to inspire us to care more, that helps us, in my opinion, and it gives us a reason to do anything about it. Because for the most part, like, people might agree with something logically, though we have to really, it has to hit home for us to care enough to actually do something about it.
Well, they just conditioned us after lockdown of not even being able to interact. Last night I took a walk, and here comes 3 women. Summer and I took our walk, and I said, "Hi." Not one of them said hello. We got to get people to just start saying hello and having a little eye contact.
People are afraid to look at each other anymore.
I'm not.
Good. Me too.
We've got to teach the youth what makes them the happiest, what jazzes them, what energizes them. Because they have to do it the rest of their lives. They've got to have a career. Let's say, "Hey, young person, what do you like? Do you like playing ball? Do you like hiking?" Then add another piece to that, and build back character, because half the kids I know, they can't look up from their cell phones. We've got to stop this. Just have cell phone time. But then again, you look at the parents and you got to say, well, you can't choose your parents. So I've
Yeah.
been really, really good today. I haven't cracked any jokes. That's next one. But passion, the only way we will prosper in this industrial hemp industry or anything environmental is if you don't have the passion first. You got to have passion for something. You got to have principles. Make sure what you're doing is good for everybody, the land, the people, the environment. And then you're going to have the prosperity. Prosperity doesn't come first. I don't know how many people I've talked to where they're like on the rainbow. They want that pot of gold. Well, you got to build the rainbow first. It's got to rain first.
I just said that to my friend yesterday. I said, you can't buy the rainbow. The rainbow comes free.
Yeah.
You got to rain.
Yeah, you got to rain first. So there's hope. I'm very concerned about this new legislation. I'm concerned about who's dictating it.
What new legislation are you speaking about for those that aren't?
The scrutiny that's coming down on CBD producers.
Talk about it.
Well, I haven't read the bill yet or read the proposal, other than they're going to have to comply with, Richard would know more about this, but they're going to have to comply if it's a nutraceutical or if it's a pharmaceutical. You have to have clinical trials. You have to have FDA approval. If you're going to make a food product, it's, the health inspector comes in, makes sure the kitchen meets health requirements, the packaging. And this is an easy thing, and it's amazing. The Federal Trade Commission is in charge of labeling. They answer the phone. If you Google Federal Trade Commission, Washington, D.C., there's a human that answers the phone. Ask them. Don't assume. That, I made a product and I put a pretty label on it. Well, where's your barcode? Where is your contents? Where's your percentages? Because whether you like it or not, you got to do that, to be successful and embraced by, consumers, even though the consumers probably don't read too many labels. But teach your kids to read labels,
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Do you know that 9 teaspoons of sugar in a can of Coca-Cola? There's an excellent book that Ralph Nader wrote many years ago that reported all kinds of obscure things. I think our kids should start reading this and seeing, what to avoid rather than it being put in their face, that. This has been awesome for me. I feel like I've been able to just purge information just a little bit. If someone walks away with just one little piece, that's progress.
Well, thank you, really. I know you're very busy, and I'm grateful for your time and for you sharing, your experiences and your solutions in what you're seeing as ways to fill the gaps and the holes in our foundation of humanity, and to give us a better integrity and that allows us to actually build up and have wellness rather than building up on something that's fake, that's only actually poisoning everything anyway. And that doesn't
Yeah,
even, you know,
we got it. It's right here. It's a stick. It's a simple stick that has so many applications for use that will eliminate components that have been a negative impact in our
and
life.
you can use it in a small scale in terms of mechanically separating the hurd, and you can use it in a small scale in terms of hand weaving stuff, as you're saying.
No. You can forget the hand weaving is a hobby. No, if this was grown correctly and handled correctly, you would have 85% of a core of a plant. This other fiber, you could focus on one industry of application, blending it with other natural fibers so that it is inherently fire retardant. As a product developer, it's so difficult when I'm talking about these things because detail is critical. It's not complicated, but this requires that requires this, and it's all mechanical. And this fiber, I never used anything. I didn't use a chemical. This wasn't irrigated grown hemp. And this was grown right here in Colorado.
You can turn that fiber into what?
I can make this into a non-woven composite that could be car panels. It could be, God, I should have brought more props.
We have a few minutes, so you can list off whatever comes to your mind about how different uses for that.
A worsted weight yarn blended with U.S. alpaca, bring back the alpaca industry. Okay, the llama, the sheep. When I first came to Colorado, everyone raised sheep. We were a big wool producer, and really the only warm natural fiber is animal hair. But the animals must be humanely raised and sheared. Well, a good example is an alpaca farm. I go visit an alpaca farm. It's wonderful. And if you're going to use an animal hair, as a product developer, it's my duty to be sure that the animal is raised humanely. Step one, because if it isn't, you don't want to see that side of me. It's about the people and the resources. I'm a full package. It's not just about the product. It's about how you get there to make the product.
You're speaking my language, and here at Guerrilla Healer, we're all about full spectrum, and you are, exactly like what you're saying right now should be put up on the wall, and it's on the wall of my soul, and that's how I live, and that's what it is, and that's why you're here today. So thank you. I salute you. And for everybody else who's heard Barbara talk about Summer Star has her own episode in season 1 of the Pharms Not Farms podcast. And you can listen to Summer talk more in depth about environmental textiles and what they got going on over there. Because today was, what was it? Modern Hemp 101 with Barbara Filippone and the Italian, not the Italian. And I'm just really honored that you felt called to share all this here today, and perhaps we'll get to have more conversations and get into more, and just, I'm glad that we're on the same team.
Thanks, I am too. And blessings to everyone that has a passion to make change. Don't give up. Just keep that passion alive, So till we meet again, and
Thank you.
you.
I love you too. I love that you just took a deep breath, because that's the way that we often end this show. And so perhaps we can share together the miracle of life by taking a deep breath together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you all. Shout out to buildersoil.com. Shout out to Enviro Textiles. Barbara, how do people get in touch with Enviro Textiles?
Google Enviro Textiles.
Boom, that sounds easy enough.
And we answer our phones. You get a human. And we provide resource lists. Summer's in charge of operations, and she can really explain. I'm just product development and helping to change something that can change. The chair I'm sitting on would be a better use for recycling plastic than putting it in my clothes. And I'm wearing cashmere. So,
off-gassing is a big thing. I want people to definitely keep that in mind and look it up if you feel like researching a little bit more about what's going on with what we're wearing, what we're sleeping in, in terms of our bedding and the whole nine. It's a big deal. And, a lot of us want to stay willfully ignorant, or ignorance is bliss, or just naive if we don't know. But now that we know, we have the ability to respond to our abilities. That's being responsible. And it's nice to be mindful, because we really are, we're powerful. And we can create the world we wish to see. And so Barbara, keep being a luminary, in your positivity teaches us, your loving kindness teaches us through all your wisdom. It's experience and learning what not to do, seeing what solutions are and where to apply them. And may we continue to come together and do that, and and be our solutions. We are the solution to our problems. And
I want to just say, consumers demand transparency. Demand it. These new brands that are coming out question what they are.
Even the old brands, a lot of people are familiar with things that that we have no idea what they are, but we do with them. We're familiar with them.
Yeah. So sit on a towel in your car. Don't put your baby in a car seat without a barrier cloth. Start being conscious of those things. So I guess we better rock and roll.
Yes, I have to see a client in a few minutes, and you probably have other things to do today. So everybody definitely subscribe to the Pharms Not Pharms podcast on Spotify and Apple, and check out all archived episodes, pharmsnotpharms.org. Once again, shout out buildersoil.com, shout out Summer, shout out Lend a Hand and Richard and everybody. And keep the faith.
Don Wershafter has the most incredible museum of the history of the cannabis medicine. You should get him on the show.
Thank you for telling me about him. We'll have to talk more about him. And is there anything that you can say in like a quick bit where he's at, or
We have an OG reunion.
make it happen. I'm here.
You know,
Here. Let's set it up. Sounds
well,
amazing.
if the I don't know what the HIA is anymore because I don't get included, but let's restart here. Come on, when we would have our conventions, it was a family reunion.
Mm.
And when people look at us OGs and say, oh, they're all pissed off. No, we're just old and we want you guys to have a solid future.
Well, that's the frequency of understanding that I can get with, and I'm glad that you're delivering it that way, because it's easier to learn. Like I said, it's easier to learn from loving kindness than it is from frustration. So in that way, thank you. And let's keep the conversation going. You're great, and I'm grateful. And yeah.
Thanks. It's cool. It's all cool.
All love. All right. Well, thank you again, dear.
Right.
We'll talk very soon.
Okay. Till
All right.
we meet again, and you have an open invite up to the western slope.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a great day.
You too. You
All
too.
right. Take care, friend. Thank you, everyone. I hope you go away from this with just something to broaden your perspective of what opportunity we have.
Mm.
Okay, see you guys.
Later. Love.
Bye. Yeah, big love.
Subscribe to the Pharms Not Farms podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.